Hello everybody, this is Ben Kenver, aka The Ultimate Rabbit. I'm back again with another commentary on an episode of Homicide Life on the Street. And this time we're going to be talking about Son of a Gun, which was the 4th episode of the first season. This is a especially significant one. We've been introduced to Officer Chris Thormann already in the few other episodes. He's played by Lee Turgison, and in this one, he is seriously wounded. The episode was directed by Nick Gomez. The story is by Tom Fontana, and the teleplay is by the great Jimmy Yoshimura, or James Yoshimura, as he's typically listed as. So anyway, I have my DVD. I have the Shout Factory DVD all set up here, so I'll start it at the same time. Okay, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And here we start with John Polito, the late great John Polito as Steve Garcetti, who is somehow convinced that John Wilkes Booth was not the lone assassin who killed Abraham Lincoln, President Abraham Lincoln. And I actually like this little moment here with Daniel Baldwin, and he's like, you can't fake moments like that in this series. That's great. I love how life unfolds on screen here in this particular episode. Now, Nick Gomez directed this episode, and he is known for directing 2 indie crime movies of the 1990s, Laws of Gravity and New Jersey Drive. And, like other directors, I mean, I imagine he got a bit of freedom to shoot it the way he wanted to, but, as much as they want to put their own stamp on Homicide, they can't quite do it. But he does get a certain reality here. That's right, don't encourage him. And this is the first episode in the series where a fellow cop gets shot. Yeah, news doesn't hit right away. He tells him it's his amigo Chris Thormann, and we've seen Chris Thormann in other episodes, played by Lee Turgison, of course. And he's been shown to be just a really nice guy and a very dedicated police officer, so this is quite devastating. And this being the first season of Homicide, we do not see any violence on screen. In some ways, it makes this scene, and when we first see Steve on the hospital table, all the more unnerving, because the wounds kind of speak for themselves, or as much as they can on a network television show. And of course, we're going through the credits again, and these are great credits. And yet somehow, even though the actors are listed in alphabetical order, Ned Beatty is always at the end of the credits. I'm not sure why. And we get introduced to a lot of different actors in this episode. And the doctor there, that's the late Sean Weitzel, who, this is his first appearance here as Dr. DeVilbiss. He's a wonderful presence throughout the show. He would later work with Tom Fontana on writing episodes of the HBO series Oz. I mean, this is, I can tell right away, Chris said he's taking this case personally. And why wouldn't he? He's had a close relationship with Thormann, has helped train him. So this episode covers a lot of ground. I mean, it deals with the shooting of Chris Thormann. And, of course, we're dealing with Adena Watson again. And you look right there, that's Walt McPherson, who makes his first appearance in the series here. He would later go on to play the most odious character in Homicide history, Roger Gaffney. It's not made clear here if he's playing Roger Gaffney in this episode as if he were a patrolman. It's tempting to believe he did because the attitude is the same. It should be added that, Walt McPherson is said to be the polar opposite of Roger Gaffney, and it's just a barrel of laughs on Seth. And he has done a lot of work with John Waters, as he is a Baltimore actor, so I certainly hope so. I mean, because Gaffney is such a hateful character, and he makes my blood boil. And of course now, in the previous episode, Pemberton and Bayless came about this one apartment building where where certain suspects might have actually might have killed Adena, and this is the result. They're doing a search. It's kind of an unnerving scene because the apartment's so messy to where mine looks pristine in particular. And my apartment is full of various walking hazards, I should say. And now we have Bolander and his car. I imagine he had a better car than this at one point, but after his marriage went into the dumpster, he had to trade in for something that's probably on the verge of 200,000 miles. And this is where he lives, and yeah. It's interesting. I mean, it's probably not the safest neighborhood he's living in if there's a padlock on his front door as well. I'm not sure this is an apartment building that they live in. You see in a second as we come to his neighbor's apartment. And here we have Luis Guzman. I think this is one of the first things I ever saw him in. I mean, that or Brian De Palma's film Carlito's Way, which he just was such a scene stealer in. He does have fancy beer there. I don't know which kind of beer he's drinking there. It's not Budweiser, I can tell that. It might be some generic brand or, some brand that was made up for this episode. I mean, look at this. This is this really an apartment? It's more like a studio, But hey, whatever works. It kind of makes sense that we're showing Bolander in this kind of environment because obviously no longer has a house. He no longer has a wife, so he's had to, change his lifestyle a bit, mainly because of his divorce and his alimony. Much of his payment as a cop goes to his alimony, as he will reveal in a second. Wow, he has a coffin. Something kind of unnerving to having a coffin in your apartment, right? Kind of like how this conversation between these two actors evolves. I mean, and now. Yeah, that's great writing right there because it does a great job of describing Stanley Bolander and his life currently. I don't know who this actress is. I couldn't quite find her name on IMDb or Wikipedia, but I love her look. She has a very unique look. And we got another story thread here as he's talking about a hitman or a man who helps acquire hitmen for various others, and I'm dealing with Spiro Agnew, who is the vice president to Richard Nixon, and we all know how the Richard Nixon presidency turned out. Then again, when compared to the Donald Trump presidency, which resulted in not one but two impeachments, Nixon's presidency now seems like a fairy tale in comparison.
stop eating Italian, G. I live for fettuccine always.
I like how easygoing Giardello is in these episodes. And again, great descriptions there. Having a cholesterol that high is not good, man. It's not good. Sometimes you got to put pasta to the side. But yeah, it's really frustrating. And now we're going to meet Chris Thormann's wife, Eve. And she's played by Edie Falco. This is probably the first thing I ever saw her in. And she has since gone on to have an amazing career. She would go on to do Oz with Tom Fontana. And, of course, would play Carmela Soprano on The Sopranos, which made her a huge star. She worked with Nick Gomez on the film Laws of Gravity. And she was quoted as saying this, doing this episode helped give her a month's rent, pay her month's rent. Yeah. The waiting is always the hardest part of the hospital, isn't it? You know, Dr. DeVilvis is giving him some really nasty news. Yeah. Organ donor is not a question I want to hear. And obviously, Chris said he's not going to be quick to give her the bad news. And why not? You know, she's great here. Edie Falco is just fantastic in this episode. She really makes a very memorable presence. It's great watching her here. And now we're back to the Adena Watson portion of this episode. The first season or two, the first season, there were a lot of different story threads in a single episode. And it's amazing what everybody was able to get, what the writers and directors were able to get into an hour-long drama. Nothing really spectacular here. Kind of mundane in a sense, but that's by design. I'm trying to look at Gaffney's, or Walt McFigures' name tag there.
Adena was wearing heart-shaped earrings.
Didn't say. I don't know if it says Roger Gaffney or not.
Just, listen, take Luca tests of everything, prints from everywhere. It's a lot of house.
Yeah, a lot of house. Yeah. Not much in the way of curtains there, is there? It's such a mess, you know?
I tell you, if Adena was killed here, imagine what her last hours were like.
Yes, indeed.
You know, I'm not too crazy about having this thing here. I'm a custom stereo speaker maker by reputation. The guy pays me $6,000.
Stereo speaker maker by reputation, and we learned earlier, you know, so Lorenzo, sometimes he goes by Larry because everybody's got an angle, you know. That's still the case these days. Everybody's got an angle more than ever because a lot of people need to work more than one job to make ends meet. It's not the way things should be, but anyway. I like it. You know, you already see they've drank a few beers here, and he's supposed to go on a date later. I mean, he's still quite, you know, the fact that he's still quite sober after this this meeting with his neighbor. It's kind of funny. He would later go on to drink wine, you know.
She left me on 9, 10 years ago. She said she owed the world a tragedy.
She owed the world a tragedy. That's a great line.
You know, sometimes I think maybe I should make a trip down there just to say hello one more time. You know, she made my life hell. She opened up my heart. There's gotta be a woman out there looking forward to meeting me with scarlet pants. You know, I'd do anything to be in love again.
Yeah, that would be nice, wouldn't it, to be in love again?
Chris Thormann has 4 citations for valor in his 3 years.
It's interesting to see these reporters fight for, you know, try to get their microphones in or get their cameras in.
Not rest until his assailants have been apprehended. He's on the sidewalk, trim out and sprint, blind face up. He's run his out of his holster. He's gone.
It's like Clark's look there as these Baltimore officers just sort of criticized Thormann for his handling of this arrest, which has resulted in him getting shot.
That's real police. That's a Roman gladiator. Why don't you drag your narrow behind over there and tell him what you think, huh? You mean the way I said it, skirt.
It's an interesting insult on this episode. Skirt.
Look, your husband's out of surgery.
Tom Fontana said something interesting about Edie Falco. Let me see if I can look it up here. Oh yeah, here it is. Fontana said she's an actress who is unadorned by any embroidery. She does everything with such simplicity and honesty, it's breathtaking. That is quite the compliment, you know. Now this becomes a familiar scene where certain detectives beg to be put on a certain case or want to be in the box when one of their family members is being interrogated, and Giardello always says the same thing. Look, you're too close to this case. I have no business putting you on it. I need to put someone else on it. And the fact that Crissetti actually succeeds in getting this case is amazing, because in future seasons Giardello is very unyielding. I love how John Polito plays this scene. He gets, and again, Jimmy Yoshimura has such great dialogue here. Just the way he performs it here is great. Wow. It's interesting. In the previous episode, we watch Giardello just wipe off a desk when bailiff complained about not having one. And it's astonishing he doesn't do the same to Crissetti here, but... So, yeah, exactly. Yeah, Giardello actually lets him on the case. He smartly keeps him from being the primary. Of course, that doesn't stop Crissetti from saying... Yep, Lewis is always looking out for his partner, I love this discussion between Howard and Felton. Yeah, he did indeed. But Felton is one of the more conservative characters on this show. I think it's clear in one way or another he's a Republican. That's interesting. He just takes a cigarette out of his mouth and puts it around. He does have a whole library. I haven't been to it. My parents have been there, and they said it spares no detail regarding not just his presidency, but his resignation from it. That's interesting. The potholes in Guilford. Yeah, it would be nice if the tax money that goes to certain people goes to fixing streets, among other things. I love everything's so real on Homicide. Nothing is faked, at least not in this season, Now, this is interesting here. He's going to talk about how Pemberton talks to Bayless about how he will never be a true homicide detective because he doesn't have the killer's mind. This would come to reverberate many years later as Bayless grows into a veteran detective, and towards the end of the regular series, we discover he does have the killer's mind in a lot of different ways. I mean, this season, Bayless is seen as a hopelessly naive individual, but he comes to understand a little bit more than what is initially led on. Paul Schultz plays this character here. We would later see him on various shows. He would appear on 24. I believe he was on season 3 of 24. That was the one where Kiefer Sutherland's daughter, played by Alicia Cuthbert, gets menaced by a mountain lion, I believe. Anyway, it's a small role, but Paul Schultz makes the most of it. I love the way he plays it. And I love his final line. Yes, he is. He is a happy guy. I'm lucky to be doing something I love. We should be so lucky, although if it involves murder, maybe we shouldn't be that lucky. Calpurnia Church. This is a major character here. A major character in the book written by David Simon, upon which this series is based. Let's see if we can find more here on that. Okay, so the investigation into Calpurnia Church was inspired by the real-life case of Geraldine Parrish. And Parrish was accused of killing 5 husbands for insurance money and was eventually convicted of 3 of their deaths. I mean, it's nice when you come across a case where you can close many others. You can put the kibosh on many murders and take them from red to black. Yeah, no one ever, I mean, once a gun is used, criminals are not quick to keep it. They're usually quick to get rid of it. Kind of like, the way Al Pacino did in Carlito's Way. To defend himself, he took someone's gun, shot a couple people, and once he left the bar where this scene happened, he was just like cleaning up the gun, rubbing off the fingerprints, and then throwing it into a dump trunk. And I remember watching it with people, and I said, yeah, that's the way to do it. That's the way to do it. And he's talking about jazz music here, Crissetti. It's dolphin music. I guess it is, I like jazz. I don't like as much as my dad and my brother do. I need to give it more of a listen. Crissetti here has taken this case personally. Big surprise. And we're back from the commercial break here, and now Lewis is about to be interrogated by a reporter. And of course, the detectives are never quick to talk to the press, especially when they have an investigation ongoing. It's always no comment, or in Pempleton's case, get out of my way. And after a couple of nice imported beers, I'm guessing it's imported, maybe not, but anyway, Bolander is on his date with Dr. Carol Blythe, who's played by Wendy Hughes, a wonderful actress who also is sadly no longer with us. And it's great here. There's something about intimacy that's frightening, isn't it? Especially when you're doing a job of a homicide detective, or perhaps even a coroner, and you want to keep people at a certain distance. It's nice when your date notices your perfume more than formaldehyde, and formaldehyde you never really get used to, as Juliana Cox would say on a future episode. Sad but true. I think this is Mel Proctor, who plays a recurring reporter here. Yeah, reporters never know when to stop. And we get more into the working relationship between Pembleton and Bayless, and Pembleton is trying to help, but Bayless is kind of just like, look, I know you don't take me seriously, leave me alone, and once again, we're going to be reminded what a loner Pembleton is among the rest of the staff. That's right, he doesn't like anybody. Pembleton likes being his own man, as he makes clear in the very first episode. But, Giardell is like, look, you got to be part of a team, all right? And this is what happens between Pembleton and Bayless, and as we'll find in another episode or two, just how much of a great match they are as partners. And that's even though Pembleton is usually eager to not have a partner. It's interesting. He's playing with a Rubik's Cube there. I imagine, it's his way. Is like, if I can get through this Rubik's Cube, I can close this case. And, he's not able to. Well, that's mainly because he doesn't solve the Rubik's Cube like my brother does, which is remove the stickers and put them in the right place. Put the colors in the right place, Yeah, that's cheating, but hey, he solved the Rubik's Cube, didn't he? Some nice singing here. It's nice seeing Bolander's so happy. He's usually a curmudgeon, isn't he? Whether it's this season or the second or the third season, he was on. Seeing these two here is a reminder that, while the homicide detectives deal largely with death, the show itself is really about life. How we live it and how we react to things around us. People get close to death. That's interesting, and how lucky that is. Yeah, it's an interesting point. Yeah, I imagine that's the case if you're a homicide detective. Everybody looks like a murder suspect to me. And why not, I love that reflection of the building on the water there. A relatively calm evening. That's so true. That's one thing that I kind of wished I learned earlier in life, that anybody is capable of anything. And that no one ever looks like the person who's going to do this or that. That's the thing I really loved about this show when I first watched it. It doesn't feel particularly staged. It feels real. Everything's being unveiled to us in a real... just the connection the characters have here between Wendy Hughes and Ned Beatty. It's very nice. Just when things get good, he just has to get beeped. That's how old this show is. No one has beepers anymore. Everybody has a phone. Everybody has a cell phone. The cell phones have cameras, and we've long since gotten to the point where we can't imagine life without our cell phones. We're so addicted to them. I mean, does he have to take this call? Not really, but, getting close to someone, especially after you've been divorced, I imagine that's very hard. And getting close to anybody these days is hard. The COVID epidemic has really sort of kept us apart from one another. I mean, we're out of the pandemic, but still, we still feel its shadow hovering over us, don't we? It's not the way a date should end, but hey. And this is demonstration of how deeply religious Chris said he is. And in this scene, he's going to talk about the difference between a scapular and a rosary. It's a garment suspended from the shoulders, the scapular. The rosary. What can we say about the rosary that has not already been said? Probably nothing. It refers to a set of prayers used primarily in the Catholic Church and to the physical string of knots of beads used to count the component prayers. I don't blame Meldrick for feeling like, I don't get the virgin birth thing. Yeah. It's kind of like that scene in the god-awful Godzilla movie with Matthew Broderick, who says, that this monster they're following may be reproducing asexually, and the actress in the scene is like, hey, where's the fun in that? Indeed. And now we're back to Calpurnia Church. It's interesting. This actor here is talking about, he is Calpurnia Church's nephew, but also her husband. He talks about how she has hexes, and in the book, David Simon's book, it's said that the nephew here ended up eating a soup that Calpurnia had menstruated in, and as a result felt that he now was cursed and could not escape her as a result. Now, of course, this is not mentioned here in the episode, probably because the censors at NBC are like, no way you're putting that in the episode, no way. And the hex would later be mentioned on a future episode of HBO's Oz. I remember that. He's kind of like innocent, and let's face it, this guy's not very bright. Yeah, that's not a place these detectives ever want to be, because they hate not having leads. They hate not knowing what happened. And of course, then there's the lieutenant who's like, "What? You don't have anything? Find something. Come on. This murder is getting cold. All right, get on with it." Whatever works to close a case, these detectives use, and why not, people look at a show like this. Is it an atheist show or an agnostic show? I'm tempted to believe it's an agnostic show, just because people talk about the possible existence of God, but there's not much evidence to that. But somehow it's always implied that there is some higher power out there that does exist, that is watching over the characters here and the other characters in each episode. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, they still were able to trace calls back then. Well, they can. It's just back then. These are the days of Star 68. Today, it's easier to trace calls, isn't it? Yes, it is, isn't it? Hard to say. Charlie Flavin. He's played by Larry E. Hull. I don't have any information on him, but yeah, things about this character will be more deeply revealed in the following episode. After this one, and he's got migraines that he cannot get off of. Percodan is probably strong enough to knock out a horse. I mean, there's only one way to find out, but it's too easy to get addicted to this stuff these days, isn't it? It certainly was back then. And now we come to the mastermind, Calpurnia Church. She's played here by Mary Jefferson. I don't have any real information on her. I'm assuming she's a local actress. And that's, the producers are usually keen on hiring local actors, as Baltimore is a big character on this show. I mean, she doesn't come across as a mastermind, just more of an opportunist and a very devious and evil one at that. And this is a very pleasing sight. Trump? Is that an allusion to Donald Trump? I certainly hope not. I really don't want to mention his name anywhere these days. I'm recording this commentary track in 2023, where Donald Trump is the front runner for the GOP nomination, and this is even though he's been indicted on several activities and has been impeached not once but twice. That's what I'm going to say about it here. It's bad enough I'm mentioning it here. Yeah. Aldrich Lewis did a lot of work on special effects behind the scenes. I remember he made an appearance in a episode of one of my favorite shows from the late 80s, early 90s called War of the Worlds, based on the classic sci-fi film. Not to be mistaken for the one that was on the Starz network years later. I love her reaction there. I need my medicines. Yeah. She wants to perform harakiri on herself. I probably didn't pronounce that right. Her nephew and her husband is right. Yeah, she has doctors who will testify on her behalf. Well, she's not going to, is she? How many people she had murdered? Oh, yes, you did, Calpurnia. She's killed so many people, and all she cares about is getting a fried chicken sandwich. And now we're back to Bolander's apartment and his ramshackle car there, which has probably seen better days. This is crime he's been called to, and it's at his own place. His own apartment building. That neighbor, he seems to know, yeah. Now, this is interesting. I didn't expect things to take this turn. I'd love to be in love again, but unfortunately that's not going to happen for Lorenzo. That's a great line. A man of loud desperation. Kind of shocking when someone you just talked to a few days ago or a few hours ago is suddenly gone. I've experienced that in my life. It's not pleasant. Why would it be anyway? Like, you can tell when these characters are veterans, they've seen everything. It's like, oh, okay. Something different for a change. Yeah. And there are a lot of people I know who do not want to be put in a box. When they go, they want to be cremated. Wow. Giardello reassigning a detective to another case. And that's usually something he never does. And in other future episodes, certainly does not want to do. He stands by his detectives. He can be incredibly hard on them, but he's always about closing the case, Giardello. And of course, again, this is Bayless's first murder, and it's the one that will hang over him for the rest of the show's run.
Some guys, they can't make it in homicide, they get transferred to fugitive or auto theft.
Right. You know, I mean, being a homicide detective is like sort of getting to the major leagues in baseball. As Giardello would later say in a future episode, that homicide is the elite of the police force, and there is no higher calling. That's very true. And if you can't make it here, being transferred out of homicide's got to be debilitating. DeVilbiss became one of the more interesting recurring characters on this show. It's just a very well-meaning guy who cuts through the crap and, tells people what they need to know and not necessarily what they want to hear, but, most TV, when I was watching it at this time, when Homicide was on, felt very staged and not really real. And Homicide always, especially in this season and a few others, it always felt very real. You felt like life was unfolding in front of you. And that's definitely the case here. Again, Edie Falco is just fantastic. I never forgot her after watching her here, and it was just great to see her career go from here to Oz and then to The Sopranos, which took her to a whole other place.
I could have been a scientist. Or a rich stockbroker.
A scientist or rich stockbroker. Maybe she still can. Who knows?
I should not have to be here. It's horrible for me.
I imagine the wife or, the spouse of a police officer has to live with the constant fear of their loved one possibly not making it home or being the victim of violent crime. It's what Eve here is doing. She used to face a policeman's wife, worse horror. And Bolander realizes he and Lorenzo had a lot in common, and Lorenzo didn't have the chance to fall in love again. Bolander does, which I think brings him back to Dr. Blythe's apartment.
I know it's very late. It's Detective Bolander.
What's wrong?
I couldn't sleep. I wanted to drive, so I got in my car while I was driving and just around.
I imagine being an actor on this show could be quite freeing, because you don't have to worry about hitting your marks. You just got to worry about inhabiting your character. Other shows, you have to worry about hitting your marks. But, yeah, Homicide Life on the Street, they pretty much threw it all out, Wendy Hughes, I remember her. She got to play a certain love interest of Jean-Luc Picard's on Star Trek The Next Generation. And this is kind of a nice way to end the episode, because it brings us back to the jazz music that Chris and Chrisetti like to listen to, which he described as dolphin music. And that's a great shirt there with Miles Davis. I imagine my dad would love to have that shirt. Maybe it's still available somewhere. You can find just about anything on the web. It's a great piece of music. The first season, they just used different kinds of music. They didn't. I mean, once season 2 came around, that's when they started putting on certain songs, and Chris Turchison, Lee Turchison's brother, became the music supervisor and just came up with a lot of great pieces of great songs to introduce. And this season, I think it was kept fairly low budget, and they didn't want to spend too much money on music, perhaps, but they did take the time to include this piece of music here. And that's a great image there of Miles Davis. Barry Levinson, Tom Fontana, executive producers. So, yeah, that's the end of Son of a Gun. It's interesting watching it after all these years. You just pick up the little tidbits. There's a lot going on in this episode. It's a lot for an hour-long drama. Okay, so that concludes this particular commentary track, and I'll try to get to the next episode as soon as I can. Thanks for listening, guys.